I opened the door expecting another worker, just some ordinary man with his toolbox and small talk. But the moment I saw him, I felt my body react in a way I hadn't allowed in years. Rafael, that was his name. My husband had hired him to fix the roof, said he'd be by early, but he hadn't mentioned the rest. The way the man filled the doorway like he owned it. Boots heavy with dirt, a shirt clinging to his chest, streaked with dust. Forearms brown from the sun, veins like cords of rope under the skin. He didn't smile politely, the way men usually do when they see me, when they see an older woman. No, Raphael's eyes traveled over me without shame, slow and deliberate, as if he was measuring me. My pulse jumped in my throat. "Morning," he said, voice low, rough, carrying the weight of someone who didn't waste words. I stepped aside quickly, pretending I wasn't flustered. "Come in. The ladder's already set up outside. You'll need to see the attic, too." He brushed past me, the scent of sweat and wood dust trailing in his wake. I hated the way my body leaned into it. My husband was at the office, as always. I was alone in this house with a man who looked at me like no one had in decades. I busied myself in the kitchen, making tea, folding a dish towel, anything to distract myself from the sound of his boots on the roof above me. Each thud, each scrape of his hammer vibrated through the house and through me. I caught myself at the window, staring at his shirt riding up as he bent to lift planks, sweat dripping down his neck. When he finally came down, wiping his face with the back of his arm, I was already at the sink, pretending to rinse dishes. He leaned against the doorway, not asking, not waiting, just standing there, watching me. "Water," I offered, my voice thinner than I wanted. He nodded once. I poured him a glass, and when I handed it over, his fingers closed around mine, not by accident, not lightly. His skin was rough, hot from the sun, his grip too firm for it to be just a pass. My breath hitched. He drank, never breaking eye contact, then set the glass down slowly. "You watch me too much," he said, just like that. No hesitation, no laugh to soften it. My cheeks burned. I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. Rafael smirked, the corner of his mouth pulling upward, and stepped past me toward the door without another word. His shoulder brushed mine, heavy, deliberate, like a warning or a promise. When the door closed behind me, I stood frozen in my kitchen, heart racing, hands still tingling from his touch. I was 60 years old, married, and yet for the first time in years, I felt like a woman who had just been seen. The next morning, the sound of boots on my porch woke me before the alarm ever could. My husband was already gone, rushing to his office without even noticing me in the kitchen. The usual silence settled in the house until Rafael arrived. I told myself to stay calm, to keep things polite, to stop reading into his bluntness from yesterday. But when I opened the door, there he was again, sweat already glistening on his collarbone, though it was barely past 8, a toolbox in one hand, the other pushing his hair back with careless ease. "Señora," he greeted, voice deep, eyes steady on me. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. I stepped aside. He passed, close enough for his arm to graze mine, and I swore he did it on purpose. I kept busy while he worked, folding laundry, wiping counters that didn't need wiping, walking past the window more often than necessary. Every time I glanced out, my eyes betrayed me, watching him haul wooden beams up the ladder, shirt clinging, muscles stretching and flexing with each motion. There was nothing delicate in him. He was raw strength, sweat and dust, the kind of man who reminded me of everything I thought I had aged out of. Around midday, I decided to bring him water, a small gesture, nothing more. But the moment I stepped into the sunlight, the heat felt different, heavy, charged. He climbed down the ladder, his boots hitting the ground with a thud that made my stomach tighten. His shirt was damp, sticking to his chest, his throat gleaming with sweat. I held out the glass like it was a shield. "Water," I said, too quickly. He didn't take it at first. He just looked at me, eyes dark, unreadable, until I felt my skin prickle. Then he reached for the glass, his fingers wrapping around mine, deliberate again, his palm rough, firm, swallowing my hand with his grip. "Obrigado," he muttered, low. He drank half in one long pull, throat working, then lowered the glass without letting go of my hand. His thumb pressed against my knuckle, rough pad dragging slowly before he finally released me. My breath stuttered, traitorous. He tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing on me. "You like watching me work?" Not a question, a statement. I should have denied it. I should have laughed, brushed it off. Instead, I froze, heat rushing to my face. He smirked, just enough to show he knew the truth, then tipped the glass back to finish it. When he handed it over, his fingers grazed mine one last time, slower than they needed to. I walked back inside, heart pounding, my legs weak beneath me. I told myself it was wrong, that I was imagining things, that this was nothing. But the truth was already there, pulsing in the space between us. He knew I wanted him, and worse, I knew it too. The silence was different when my husband left for his trip. It wasn't freedom, not exactly. More like exposure. The house felt bigger, emptier, every sound echoing louder than it should. And above me, boots thudded across the roof, steady and heavy, each one reminding me I wasn't alone. Rafael had arrived early, his usual nod, his usual lack of small talk. But this time, there was no one else expected to come home, no chance of my husband walking in. It was just me and him, with hours of daylight stretching like a taut rope between us. I told myself to keep busy. Laundry, dishes, meaningless little tasks. Yet, somehow I found myself drifting toward the window again and again, watching him. He had taken off his shirt in the heat, muscles slick under the sun, back flexing as he hoisted planks. His skin glistened, tanned, carved by years of labor. I should have looked away. Instead, I lingered, pulse quickening like a girl caught in something she shouldn't be doing. He noticed. Of course he noticed. When the hammering stopped, I heard his boots on the ladder, then on the porch. My heart stuttered. I didn't move fast enough. By the time I turned from the window, he was already stepping inside through the kitchen door. "Forgot something," he muttered, eyes sliding over me as he crossed the room toward the tools he'd left. I swallowed hard, clutching the dish towel in my hands. "Everything okay?" My voice cracked, betraying me. "Fine." He bent, grabbed what he needed, and straightened. Sweat rolled down his chest, catching in the line of his stomach before disappearing into the waistband of his jeans. And then he just stood there, looking at me, not politely, not with pretense. His eyes traveled down my face, lingered on my throat, my chest, before climbing back up again. Heat bloomed under my skin, shame mixing with something far more dangerous. I stepped aside, trying to make room in the narrow hallway as he headed back out, but he didn't give me much space. When he passed, his bare chest grazed my shoulder, warm, damp, solid. He could have shifted. He didn't. His weight pressed against me, just enough to remind me what he was. Younger, stronger, unyielding. I froze, dish towel clutched in my fist, my breath caught somewhere between fear and desire. Rafael didn't stop. He didn't apologize. He just kept walking, boots thudding against the floor, leaving the air behind him charged, humming with what had just happened. I leaned against the counter once he was gone, my knees weak. My skin still tingled where he brushed me, as if he had branded me with nothing but contact. It was nothing, a simple touch in a cramped space. That's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't nothing. It was the first time in years I had felt alive. The sky broke open, just as Rafael was finishing outside. One moment, the air was heavy. The next, it was thunder and rain crashing against the roof he'd been hammering all week. I rushed to shut the windows, candles already waiting in the drawer for the power I knew would fail. By the time he stepped in from the porch, soaked through, the lights had already gone out. The house glowed only from 2 candles I had lit on the kitchen table. He didn't knock. He didn't ask. He just came inside, water dripping from his hair, shirt plastered to his chest. He kicked his boots off by the door and looked at me, not embarrassed, not apologetic, just looking, as if I were the only thing worth noticing. I tried to steady myself by fussing with the teacups. "Storm will pass soon," I said, my voice too light, too nervous. Rafael sat down at the table, elbows resting wide, candlelight carving shadows across the planes of his face. He didn't answer, just watched me move around the kitchen, his gaze heavy, unblinking. The silence filled the room thicker than the storm outside. I set the teacup down and finally sat across from him, pulling my robe tighter. My fingers twisted the hem nervously. "You'll catch cold like that," I muttered. His lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "I've worked in worse." His voice was gravel, low and direct. The candle flickered between us, and in its glow, his eyes were darker than ever, predatory, patient. I tried to steady myself by fussing with the teacups. "You're quiet," I said, trying to sound casual, but it came out as breathless. "I don't waste words," he said simply. Then, after a pause, he leaned forward, forearms braced on the table, eyes pinning me in place. His tone dropped, rough, final. "You don't look like a woman who's touched at night." The air left my lungs. Heat shot through my chest, through my face. My hands gripped the teacup so tight I thought it would break. That's not... I tried to answer, but my voice was weak, useless. He didn't blink. He didn't soften. He continued, "You act like someone who's hungry and pretending not to be." My throat went dry. Every part of me screamed to stand up, to walk away, to tell him to stop. But instead, I sat frozen, pulse hammering in my ears, the truth burning inside me. Rafael leaned even closer, the candlelight catching the water dripping down his jaw. I could feel the heat of him across the table, could smell the storm still clinging to his skin. His voice dropped to a near growl. "Am I wrong?" I shook my head before I could stop myself. The smallest movement, barely there. But he saw it, and his smirk told me he'd been waiting for it. I pushed my chair back abruptly, heart racing, the spell breaking only because I forced it to. "It's late. You should rest." He sat back, slow, controlled, letting me retreat, letting me feel the weight of what I had admitted without words. As I hurried into the hallway, my body trembling, I realized the storm outside wasn't nearly as dangerous as the one I had just invited inside. The next morning, I tried to tell myself nothing had happened. No words had been spoken that couldn't be taken back. No lines crossed that couldn't be ignored. I woke early, made coffee, cleaned the counters until they shined, forcing my body into routine, as though order could erase what Rafael had said in the dark. But his voice wouldn't leave me. "You don't look like a woman who's touched at night." It echoed every time I caught my reflection. He was inside the house that day, fixing a window in the dining room. The sound of his tools carried through the walls, steady, rhythmic. I chopped vegetables in the kitchen, telling myself I didn't care that he was just one room away, but my hands shook. My knife slipped against the cutting board more than once. I was slicing carrots when the blade nicked too close. My breath caught, the knife slipping from my fingers, clattering against the counter. Before I could even bend to grab it, Rafael was behind me. His presence hit first. The heat, the weight of him filling the space, then his hand. Rough fingers clamped around my wrist, stopping me cold. "Careful," he muttered, his voice right against my ear. I froze. His grip was strong, too strong for a simple warning. His palm was hot, calloused, pressing into my skin like he owned it. I couldn't breathe. The air thickened between us, my body betraying me with the way my chest rose and fell too fast. My eyes shut tight, as if darkness could hide how much I wanted to lean back into him. "You cut yourself once, I'll be the one to fix it." It wasn't a promise about bandages. It was something else, something deeper, darker, undeniable. Finally, he let go, his hand falling away slowly, as if reluctant to release me. The loss was a shock. I hated that I missed the contact the second it was gone. I turned sharply, needing to see his face, to measure what he meant. He was already stepping back, wiping his hand on his jeans like nothing had happened. But his eyes told the truth. They burned, steady, unashamed. I swallowed hard, clutching my trembling hand to my chest. "Didn't hear you tell me to stop," he cut in, straightforward, unapologetic. My breath caught again. He was right. I hadn't. And that silence, that failure to resist, felt more dangerous than the touch itself. I tried to avoid him the next morning. I really did. I stayed in my room longer than usual, made the bed twice, folded clothes that didn't need folding, anything to avoid those boots echoing through the house, the presence of him that had already burrowed too deep under my skin. But avoidance doesn't work when the man you're trying not to see moves like he owns the space. When I finally stepped into the hall, he was there, crouched by the doorway, fixing the frame, hammer in one hand. He didn't look startled to see me. He looked expectant, as though he knew I'd eventually come to him. "Morning?" I said, my voice thin. His eyes flicked up. They held mine, dark and steady, pinning me where I stood. He didn't bother with politeness. Instead, he set the hammer down slowly and rose to his full height, towering over me in the narrow hall. "You've been hiding," he said. Not a question, a statement. Heat crawled up my neck. "I've been busy." Rafael took a step forward, just one, but it stole the air from my lungs. His shoulders filled the space. His scent, sweat, dust, sun surrounded me. There was no room to retreat without making it obvious I was running. "I want you." The words dropped from his mouth, blunt and heavy, nothing softened, nothing disguised. I felt them hit me like a blow, my stomach twisting, my knees weakening. "Don't," I whispered, though it sounded more like begging than refusal. "I'm married." His jaw flaxed, his eyes didn't waver. "Doesn't stop you from wanting me back." The silence stretched. My breath came quick and shallow, my hands clutching the fabric of my robe like it could shield me. My body betrayed me. The heat in my face, the tremor in my chest, the way I couldn't look away. I should have denied it. I should have laughed, turned, walked away. But I didn't. I stood frozen, wide open under his gaze, and that was enough. He smirked, not cruel, not mocking. It was the smirk of a man who had seen through me completely. "You think hiding in your kitchen makes a difference? I see it in your eyes every time I touch you, every time I walk past. You want me." I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My silence was louder than words, heavier than any confession I could have spoken. Rafael leaned down, his face just inches from mine, his voice low, almost a growl. "Say it." The house had grown too small for the both of us. Every room he entered seemed to shrink around his shoulders, his presence crowding out the air. I told myself I'd keep busy, that I'd stay out of his way. But somehow, by late afternoon, I ended up in the hallway at the same moment he came through, carrying a plank under his arm. We stopped too close to be proper, too close to pretend it was an accident. "Excuse me," I whispered, though I didn't move. Rafael's eyes slid down my face, over my lips, then back up again. He shifted the plank aside and stepped forward, closing the space instead of giving it. My back hit the wall before I realized I was moving. He caged me there, one arm braced against the wall beside my head, the other hanging loose at his side, casual as if he hadn't just trapped me. My pulse hammered in my throat. "Rafael." My name came out shaky, weak, and that alone seemed to please him. His lips curved into a faintest grin, a predator's grin, not sweet, not soft. "You don't tell me to stop," he said, voice low, rough, certain. I shook my head quickly. "This is wrong." "Maybe." He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "But you're still here." The heat of him pressed into me without touching, his chest inches from mine, his hand planted firm against the wall, his scent filling every inch of air. My body trembled, my skin begging for what my mouth still refused to allow. "You're married," he said. Not judgment, not accusation, just fact. I know. My voice was nearly a whisper. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing, devouring me. Then why are you breathing like this? I couldn't answer. Shame and desire twisted inside me until I thought I might break. My chest rose and fell against the edge of his presence, every nerve raw, every inch of me awake in ways I hadn't felt in decades. He moved even closer, so close the heat of his body radiated against mine, though he never let our skin meet. His mouth hovered near my ear. He'd tell me to move, he growled. I opened my lips, but nothing came out. I wanted to push him away, but my body stayed pinned, my hands gripping the wall behind me instead of his chest. The seconds stretched long, unbearable. Finally, he pulled back, slow, deliberate, leaving me against the wall, weak, trembling, craving. He smirked as he stepped away, voice like gravel over stone. You didn't say it. And then he walked down the hall, boots echoing, leaving me with the taste of his nearness still burning on my lips, though he hadn't kissed me yet. The memory of him pinning me against the wall haunted every step I took the next day. I tried to cook, to read, to lose myself in meaningless chores, but every time my hands stilled, every time my breath caught, it was his voice I heard again. You didn't say it. He knew. He knew I couldn't tell him to stop. By evening, the air inside the house felt too heavy, pressing down on me as I set dinner on the counter. I nearly jumped when I felt his presence before I saw him. Rafael stepping into the kitchen, shoulders broad, face shadowed by the fading sun. You're working late, I said softly, though I wasn't asking. Wanted to finish? His voice was blunt, his tone carrying the same weight it always did. He didn't explain further. He didn't need to. I turned, busying myself with plates, but his boots thud closer across the floor until I could feel the heat of him behind me. My hand shook as I reached for a dish, the silence suffocating between us. You still not telling me to stop, he said, low, almost a growl. I froze. Breath lodged in my throat. Slowly I turned and he was right there. His chest inches from mine, his eyes locked on me like a predator that had waited long enough. Rafael. My voice broke on his name. He didn't wait. He didn't ask. He moved in one sharp step, his hand bracing the counter beside my hip, his other hand gripping my jaw, rough fingers tilting my face up to his. And then his mouth was on mine. Not gentle, not hesitant, hungry. The kiss hit like fire, all teeth and heat and want. I gasped, but the sound was swallowed, devoured by the weight of him pressing against me, his lips demanding, his tongue forcing mine to answer. It wasn't tender. It wasn't sweet. It was raw, primal, the kind of kiss that stripped years off my body and reminded me I was still flesh, still blood, still alive. My hands clutched at his shirt, pulling him closer, shame melting into heat until there was no thought, only sensation. His body was solid against mine, his chest pressing into me, his breath hot and ragged as if he had held back for far too long. When he finally pulled back, it wasn't distance, it was possession. His forehead rested against mine, his thumb still dragging rough across my jaw. You taste like you've been waiting for this, he muttered, voice gravel deep. I swallowed hard, lips swollen, my body trembling. We can't. But even as I said it, I leaned forward again, betraying myself, wanting more. His smirk cut through the dark. You already have.
And then his mouth was on mine again, harder, hungrier, until all I could do was give in to the storm I had let through my door.
I woke the next morning with lips that still burned. Every time I touched them, I could feel the weight of him again, the hunger in his kiss, the raw strength in his hands. I told myself it was a mistake, a slip, a moment I would bury. But the truth was harder. I wanted more. My husband called from the road around noon. His voice was flat, mechanical, checking boxes, bills, groceries, the neighbor's car parked too close to our driveway. Not once did he ask how I was. Not once did he notice the silence on my end. I hung up with my chest hollow, the sound of Rafael's boots in the other room filling that emptiness in a way my husband never had. By the evening, I couldn't avoid him. He was fixing the last section of the roof and came down just as the sun was setting. His shirt clung to him, damp with sweat, streaked with dust. He wiped his face with his forearm, then looked at me like he always did. No disguise, no hesitation, as if he could see through every layer of me. "You've been quiet," he said. "I have nothing to say," I whispered, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. Rafael stepped closer. "Then I'll say it for you." His eyes locked onto mine, dark and certain. "You want me because I give you what he doesn't." My stomach twisted, shame and need colliding. "Don't!" But he cut me off, blunt as ever. "I see the way you look at me. I feel it every time I touch you. Don't lie to me, Señora. He doesn't touch you. I will." The words tore through me, brutal, true. My hands trembled at my sides, my heart hammering so loud I thought he could hear it. I tried to deny it, to say anything that would end this fire before it burned me alive, but what came out instead was the truth I had buried too deep for too long. "You're right." The confession left me raw, exposed, trembling. My voice cracked, tears stinging at the corner of my eyes. "He doesn't. Not in years. And My throat tightened. I don't even remember what it feels like to be wanted." Rafael's jaw tightened, his eyes burning hotter, but he didn't move closer. Not yet. He just let the truth hang there, thick in the air. Then he said it, his voice low, like a growl. "Then let me remind you." I should have stepped back. I should have run, but instead I stood frozen as his hand found my waist, rough and hot, pulling me into him like I belonged there. My body responded before my mind could fight, melting against the solid heat of his chest. And in that moment, as I pressed into him, lips parting to meet his again, I knew this wasn't just a kiss anymore. This was betrayal. The house was too quiet after my confession. Every clock tick, every breath felt louder than it should. I should have run from him, begged him to leave before we crossed a line I could never come back from. But I didn't. I lingered in that silence, standing inches from him, my pulse racing like it belonged to someone younger, braver, reckless. Rafael didn't rush. He just stood there, eyes steady, chest rising and falling, his hand still gripping my waist like he owned it. He gave me space to choose, but his body radiated heat, his presence swallowing the air, daring me to deny what was already burning between us. "You can stop this," he said, voice low, rough, more growl than words.
Tell me to walk out that door, and I will. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat was dry, my body screaming what my lips refused to speak. His hand slid higher, fingers brushing the side of my ribs, the curve of my breast. My breath hitched, my knees weakening. "You won't," he muttered, answering for me. And then he pulled me hard against him. The kiss was brutal, desperate, full of heat that had been coiled too long. His mouth devoured mine, tongue fierce, teeth catching on my lip until I moaned against him. His hand gripped the back of my neck, rough, controlling, while the other clutched my hip tight enough to bruise. I melted. God help me. I melted into him, clutching at his shirt, dragging him closer as though I'd been starving and only he could feed me. My body trembled, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was need. He broke the kiss only to press his lips to my ear, his breath hot. "You're mine now. Doesn't matter how old, doesn't matter who he is, you're mine." The words should have horrified me. Instead, they set me on fire. We stumbled back into the kitchen, the edge of the table catching my hip as he pressed me down against it, his mouth trailing rough, demanding kisses down my throat. My hands clawed at his shoulders, his back desperate to feel him, to make sure this was real. "Rafael," I whispered, my voice ragged, torn between guilt and desire. He hushed me with his mouth, biting gently at my neck. "Say it again," he growled. And I did. Over and over, his name spilling from my lips like a prayer, like a confession. The storm outside had long passed, but inside my house, another one raged. A storm of sweat, heat, teeth, and hands. No gentleness, no pretense, only the raw, dangerous truth of two bodies colliding where they never should have. When he finally pulled back, both of us breathless, his eyes locked onto mine with the ferocity that shook me. "You belong to me now." And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel old. I didn't feel invisible. I felt alive.